to the Wellness to Wellbeing podcast with me, your host, Susanna. Join me as we explore all things being human, embodiment, trauma, somatic healing, spirituality, and so much more. Diving into what it actually means when we talk about healing, beyond the obsession with fixing ourselves and being on the never-ending quest for better and perfect. Come along on the journey from forever seeking wellness to the presence in our well-being. Welcome back to the best podcast in the world, Wellness to Wellbeing, with me, Susanna, where we're doing less of the ness and more of the being. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can listen to my first intro episode on a bit of how this podcast came to be and why I named it what I did. So welcome back on this very cloudy and rainy day here in Mallorca, Spain. I'm sitting in my office, which is also actually my yoga room, staring out my window, and it is beautiful, a beautiful winter's day. Today, I want to talk about somatics and embodiment and take a little deep dive into what this actually means. I think that these are some trendy words at the moment. Everything's somatic this, somatic that, which great. It's literally the thing I'm like the most passionate about, and that's changed my life the most. Everything's about embodiment and somatic practices and somatic therapy, and I think that's wonderful. And I was recently just teaching a class on this and explaining like, what does it really all mean? Where's the context? And realized there's really not that much context to it out there. And I think that to have a free resource for people to be able to understand this concept a little bit better and what it all means and why we do it and why we care would be really helpful. So let's dive in. Somatics. Somatic. What is it? What does it mean? Well, I think firstly, to have an understanding of the nervous system is really important. Personally, I think so, and deeply fascinating. I think if we are delving into ourselves and our bodies and healing through somatic intelligence, which is the body, to have an understanding of how it works is a really good place to start. And actually, as I always say, a form of self-love to really understand how our incredible and very complex bodies work, especially for us women, really everyone. I will say especially women that have been taught to pick their bodies apart, to start to really understand how incredible these vessels that we live in are, and to really appreciate it is just such a great first step to actual real healing and growing and evolving. So I think that an understanding of the nervous system is important. I have many resources through my business, through my website, where I teach in depth about this. So you can go to my website, you can purchase courses, there's many things there, or just get in contact with me. But I will say for now, just to give a little down low, the nervous system is a very highly complex, incredible system of any animal, because yes, we are animals, just a gentle reminder, that is basically coordinating actions and sensory information by transmitting signals to and from parts of the body. It is a system that is interpreting our external world and our internal world and communicating information through incredibly complex and intelligent cells and nerves and mainly these little chemical messengers called neurons. So it's an incredible system. It's basically telling us how to respond to the world, right? And giving information from inside the body and outside the body. And all of this is happening at lightning speed. There's different divisions of the nervous system. We have our central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord. We have our peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is basically just nerves which are communicating and transmitting signals from the brain, and lots of communication happening. This is the most simple way that I can put the nervous system for this podcast episode. It is our communication center, right? It's extremely ancient as well. It's got all these divisions, and then it's subdivided into sympathetic, parasympathetic, so fight, flight, rest and digest. And we also have the somatic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system is our sensory nerves. It's related to our senses. The somatic nervous system is our voluntary control of our body movements, is noticing where our body is in space. And it's also all the information that is gained from our senses, right? So touch, taste, smell, hearing. We also have our eyes, which is obviously the fifth sense, but the eyes are technically not part of the somatic nervous system. Very technical. So the nervous system is this incredibly intelligent, incredibly ancient system that is highly complex and highly amazing, and again is a part of an animal, which we are. It is all about survival and safety. We are all about survival and safety, which I think is something that we forget, that we are animals and that everything is for survival and is seeking safety. And that's why so many people talk about our fight flight response, our rest and digest response, because what once upon a time was a threat to us as animals, which was a predator, coming to get us in the wild, now we have so many stresses in our life that are creating the same response, which is to survive, right? Which is to fight, which is to flight, which is to freeze, which is to fawn. So it's all very complex and it's all very fascinating, and there's many resources out there, especially on my website, www.susannasoma.com, if you do want to dive in a little bit more and you're curious to learn more. We also have the enteric nervous system, which is our gut, that's a whole nother thing, which is deeply connected. And I think at the end of the day, one of the most important lessons here is that everything is so deeply connected in the human body. It's so interesting when you would learn like Western anatomy. You learn everything as separate, it's like, we have the digestive system, and then we have the lymphatic system, and then we have the respiratory system and the nervous system, and separate. And it's like, to subdivide them into systems is so important to be able to understand them. They have their purposes, and everything is connected in the human body. And it's crazy to think that it's not. It's crazy to think that our emotions don't govern our digestion, and our digestion doesn't govern our emotions, and all the things. So an understanding of our bodies, an understanding of the nervous system, in my opinion, is important to even dive into these topics, to truly understand it. I think that we can also, this is something that we teach a lot in our trainings, we can understand things on an intellectual level and not at all embody them. And so I think that that's the other thing with understanding the nervous system, understanding the body, understanding the science of it all, and then embodying it, doing the practice, feeling it in our bodies, noticing the patterns we have in our own nervous system, in the ways that we behave in life, is a different experience. And that's what really helps us to truly understand something, is to actually embody it. So before I get ahead of myself, let me dive in a little bit more. Somatics. So as I said, there's a division of the nervous system called the somatic nervous system. This is our voluntary part of our nervous system, right? The autonomic nervous system is involuntary. So our response to threat is actually involuntary. We don't have choice over that. The somatic nervous system is the voluntary part of our nervous system. It is the part that governs our movement. So like, I'm going to go walk to the kitchen right now. That's a thought. And then there's movement that happens. I'm going to move my arm right now. I'm going to move my legs. Voluntary control of body movements. And then also our senses. It's connected to our senses. So our senses are carrying information from the external world as well into our bodies. So soma means the body. That's literally the definition. Soma means the body. So when we're talking about anything somatic, we are referring to the body. And when it comes to any type of therapy, any type of processing or working with trauma, if we don't incorporate the body, I'm just going to say it, it's pointless. It's literally pointless, because that's where everything is actually stored. And we live in such a mind-centered existence. And don't get me wrong, what is so amazing about somatic work is that we are actually connecting the mind and the body. Where there's no longer a disconnect there. We're connecting both. We're not saying, oh, let's get rid of the mind. Fuck the mind. That's a little bit impossible, number one. So let's not set ourselves up for failure. We're connecting them. We're starting to bring awareness to the body. So whenever you hear anything about a somatic practice, somatic work, we're talking about incorporating the body, right? And to talk about somatics, somatic work, somatic practices, it's actually a very big umbrella term. It's not really referring to something so specific. We know it means we're referring to body-based work. So it's like someone said to me recently, I don't get it, what's somatic yoga? And I was like, okay, well, yoga itself is a lifestyle practice. Yoga means union. If we're talking about the practices of yoga, which incorporate the breath, which incorporate asana, physical movements, we're talking about somatic work. So like, yeah, somatic yoga is some part of practice where we're incorporating the body, which is also a lot of the time meditation, depending on what type of meditation you're talking about. So rather than practices, there's many practices, spiritual practices that are about transcending the body. Somatic work is not that. Somatic work is being more so in the body, incorporating the body into the practice, into the work, right? Seeing what's there. We store memories and experiences, trauma in the body, not out of choice. That's where it's stored. That's where it is. It's in our cells. It's in our tissues. The experiences are there. It's not woo-woo. It's science. That's fact. Trauma lives in the body. Trauma is the response to something that happened. Trauma isn't the event that happened itself. Trauma is the response in the body of whatever happened or was happening, right? You have shock trauma, there was one event. You have complex trauma. You have chronic trauma, which is something that happened over time. Regardless, trauma is the response that happened in the body. It means, one of the best ways I like to explain it is it's like a response that wasn't finished. It's like a response that wasn't finished. And so this dysregulation is stored. And this is stored in the body. So unless you're incorporating the body into your healing journey or into your therapy, you can't heal things just in the mind. The somatic body could be speaking a completely different language, could have a completely different story to how you're intellectualizing the experience in your mind. And this is why in life, you know, we've all been there where it's like, why does this same pattern keep showing up in my life? Why do I still keep experiencing this same thing? I thought I healed this. Why is it still coming up now, 10 years later? Why am I still feeling it now? Why did I just do a hip opening yoga class and now all of a sudden I'm bawling my eyes out thinking about my ex-boyfriend that I broke up with when I was 13? It's because our somatic body isn't our intellectualizing, interpreting mind. It's living in a different time. Not for everyone, of course, not if we allow processing to happen. But things also need to be processed through the body as they need to be processed through our words, through thinking, through mentally processing something. There needs to be that mind-body connection, right? Not to mention the fact that we also have implicit memory, right? We have explicit memory and we have implicit memory. Implicit memory is also known as unconscious or automatic memory, which refers to information that we do not store purposely and is unintentionally memorized, right? We can't necessarily consciously grasp that memory into our awareness. There's explicit memory, which is memory that we consciously can recall, a specific event or a piece of information that we can consciously recall. But there's also implicit memory, which is totally unconscious. And so to jump back to the body, the reason that, for example, meditation is so incredibly challenging for so many people, including myself, I put my hands up, it's still a challenge. And there's so many different ways, types and ways to meditate, by the way. The reason it is so challenging is because, truthfully, being in the body can be really, really, really hard. Really hard. Being in the body is actually exactly what our system is often trying to protect us from a lot of the time. Remember that we have an incredibly intelligent system guiding us, protecting us, keeping us safe, and helping us survive. So with this trend of somatic practices and release and going there and being with the body, we must remember that it's also not always that simple, right? It's so easy to say, I just need to be with my body. I say that to myself all the time, right? It can be more challenging than that. And I think this is why it's important to have a grasp and to understand and to be more trauma informed on these topics and really understand what it means. Like, as I said, where's the context? As living beings, we have so many ways that we're actually constantly trying to not be in our body. And of course, I can't generalize on every single human being's experience in life and the way they live their life. Of course, there's people that are more conscious of their body, and there's some people that are not feeling their bodies at all, often very involuntarily, by the way. We have so many mechanisms to not be in the body. You know, I notice them in myself all the time. Once you're aware of them, you're just aware of them. It's not about being like, oh no, that's bad and I shouldn't be like this. We're just aware of them. We shine a light in a dark place and we illuminate it. And that's what most human beings are doing, checking out, whether it be with, you know, watching things, eating, drinking, smoking, drugs, sex, so many things that are not necessarily all bad. And we have ways that we think as being so in the body and maybe are related to our senses as well, like eating or sex or chronic exercise or whatever it may be. And it's also a way to escape, chase a high, not really be with the felt sense, right? So somatic work is where we're really letting go of story, even if the story is an integral part, because I do believe there's a lot of teachers out there that say story is not important, you know, totally let go of the story, meaning let go of whatever the thing was that happened. Let go of how you intellectualize it in your mind, you know, the memories that you have, which I'm not fully on that train. I think story is also very, very important to process and a very important part of being human and honoring. And The idea with somatic work is that we're moving into the feeling aspect, right? So we can be talking about something and really tap into what is the feeling. When I interocept, when I go into the body, what is the feeling that I'm feeling right now? For example, I could be talking about something that's difficult for me to talk about that upsets me. And I could be saying it's really upsetting. It doesn't make me feel good. I feel sick. I don't want to talk about this. And then I could tap into what's the feeling? Where is it in my body? Well, I feel it in my lower stomach. What does it feel like? It feels like a tightness. It feels like almost like a nausea, almost like a bubbling up towards my throat. I feel a closing in my throat. I feel a pressure on my shoulders, right? So really going into the feeling. When we allow ourselves to go into the feeling, we can touch on the feeling. A lot of the time, these mechanisms we're using to escape are to escape the feeling, because the feeling can be really hard. It's like I spoke about in the last episode. We aren't taught to feel the lows. We're taught to run from the lows, right? It's not okay to feel the lows because we're so afraid of getting trapped there. As humans, we're constantly trying to control. We want security. We want control. Right? If we're in control, we feel that security, we feel that safety. It's such a normal human thing, right? And so that's also why we run from the feelings that don't feel so good, because it's like, it doesn't feel good. I don't know what to do with this. We don't just sit with it. And the most important thing I've learned in somatic work is that it's energy. And again, this isn't woo-woo. This is really science. It's energy. It's energy that needs to be moved. When you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach, and yeah, you can name it. It's sadness, it's grief, it's anger, it's whatever it is. We can name it. That's fine. But what's the feeling and how does it want to move, right? When I really tap into my feelings and I'm able to feel like, whoa, there's this feeling in my stomach, it's bubbling up, okay, it's coming into my throat, just using that as an example. I'm able, when I'm really present with the feeling rather than what it's associated with or what it should feel like, or getting into the mind to really intellectualize it, I'm able to see how and where it wants to be moved. That could be through tears. That could be through breath. That could be through screaming into a pillow. That could be through movement, shaking, dancing, right? So many different things. Using the body to allow that energy to move. And so this really comes into the interpreting versus experiencing, which is also what embodiment is. Interpreting versus experiencing. The mind is always interpreting. The body is always experiencing. We also live in a world where everything around us is encouraging us to interpret everything. And this is a part of our nervous system as well. We are interpreting safety. We are interpreting threat, right? A lot of this is based on our past experiences. For example, if the girl in my high school with, long brown hair and was 6 foot and wore pink t-shirts and had blue eyes was really, really, really mean to me for years, and that was a trauma for me, then maybe when I'm older and I come across the girl with long brown hair with blue eyes who's 6 foot wearing pink t-shirts, my mind is going to be like, there's a threat. Interpret, danger. The story might be a little bit different, but I'm going to be experiencing a feeling in my body that's telling me, hey, that's a threat. Just as an example. So the interpreting is absolutely the mind. The interpreting is not an embodied experience. The interpreting is the interpreting, right? It's actually quite disembodied. And it's very normal. Now, the experiencing, on the other hand, is the really, how do I feel in this moment? If we're really experiencing is to be in the present moment. Experiencing is to be in the present moment. Experiencing what we're feeling, where we are in this very moment, experiencing our bodies. To be in the body is to be present. To be present is to be in the body. And that's to be experiencing. And this is really what we call the bottom-up approach. Feeling and experiencing versus interpreting and story. We get to actually create capacity in our window of tolerance by doing this. So trauma can't be resolved in the mind. Processing through the mind, through that interpretation, is one way of processing. Just how important it is to talk to a therapist, talk to a coach, talk to a friend, talk to someone you trust, talk through things. It's a form of processing, right? But this is also what regulation is. Regulation, what is it? What does it look like and why is it important? Well, regulation is also processing. Again, we live in this society that teaches us hard shit happens, just move in, hold it in, push it down, let it go, right? And I always use the same analogy. Any of you that know me, you've heard me say this so many times. The beach ball, pushing the beach ball underwater, right? You think about a beach ball, a blow up ball, and if you push it underwater, you can push it underwater and you can hold it under there, right? But the longer that you push it down and the longer you hold it under the water, the more violently and quickly it springs to the surface. You can't hold it under there forever. And so this is why processing is so important for the sake of our regulation. And regulation is really the foundation for our window of tolerance and our capacity in life to be able to respond to our lives. So that processing is so important, not just in the mind, but also in the body. And what does that look like? The processing looks like the ability to be able to go into the body, which again is not just this easy, simple task for everyone. For most people, it's not. Is to go into the body and notice what needs to be moved and how it needs to be moved. And that is being with the feeling, experiencing the feeling. Only then can we really feel how it needs to be moved. Right? And that's why there's so many different types of somatic practice. You can sit with your therapist, with your coach, and you can talk through situations, memories, experiences, while you're also tapping into where that's held in your body. Which parts of you are you feeling? Which memories are coming up? It's a mixing of the interpreting and the feeling, and seeing where that leads you. This can also be noticing the feeling and then moving that out through release. But it's not always just release. It can also be using the breath to bring the body back to a state of regulation. For example, if we're in a state of stress, no matter who you are, your jaw is going to tighten, your inner ear is going to get smaller, it's going to narrow. There's things that physiologically happen when we're in a state of stress, when we're going into that sympathetic fight or flight response, right? So the jaw tightens, the inner ear narrows, usually our tongue is pressing against the roof of our mouth. Blood starts to go to what the body deems as our essential organs in order to keep us safe, in order for us to be able to fight, for us to be able to flee, to literally run away from the situation. All these things are happening because we have these ancient nervous systems that are there to keep us surviving and safe from predators. And this is our everyday life when we're experiencing stress. So we wonder why stress has such a damaging effect on human beings. Well, of course. I mean, just the feeling. I always tell people this. Simply the feeling of when you get butterflies, right? You know, when you get butterflies in your stomach. What that actually is the blood rushing away super fast from your stomach because your digestion shuts down when you're in a sympathetic state, when you're in a stress response, when you're in activation, in trigger. Digestion shuts down. That's why also when we're regulated and we're in a rest and digest parasympathetic state, it's called rest and digest. And so regulation is also a window of tolerance. It's to be able to have tolerance and respond to what's going on around us. This is why we heal. This is why we do this work. Because we want to have capacity. We want to have a window of tolerance. You know, and this can look like when there's trauma, when there's unprocessed emotions, let's just say that. When there's unprocessed emotions, experience, memories that have been pushed down and not processed in one way or another through the body, this clogs up our window of tolerance. You could see it like that. It takes up a lot of space in our window of tolerance. So then when something else happens, which it will because we're humans and this life is uncertain, we can't guarantee safety in this world, in this life that we're living in. We can't guarantee someone's not going to hurt you tomorrow. We can't guarantee that something scary is not going to happen, or that something triggering won't happen, something activating in life won't happen. And so when our window of tolerance is kind of clogged up, you could say, something happens and it can set you off really fast. And for many people, this is like there's so much stuff, push down, push down, push down, push down, and then you stub your toe, or you are making eggs in the morning and you drop one of the eggs on the floor, or you spill your coffee and you completely fly off the handle, or you just start crying and completely break down and the world feels like it's ending, or you have a panic attack. These things happen because there's no capacity. There's no capacity left. There's too much built up, right? Versus when we actually give ourselves the space and time to process what's happened to us in the feeling, also incorporating the interpreting, but also being with the body and noticing where the body needs to process and how it needs to process, we create more of a window of tolerance. We create more capacity for what's to come our way. This doesn't mean that you'll never get activated or triggered again. No way. That's impossible. That's some toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing shit. That's not a thing. You're going to get activated and you're going to get triggered again. And we can process life through the body as well. We can't ignore the body, and create tolerance, create capacity, create spaciousness within our bodies as well. But only if we check in with our bodies, only if we incorporate the body, can we truly heal. And again, as I've said before, reframing healing. Healing is to create a stronger foundation within yourself, within your body, and a stronger relationship to yourself. When we delve into this work, we get to know our patterns, our behaviors, why we do certain things, why we want certain things, why we live our lives in certain ways. We begin to understand ourselves on such a deeper level, which to me is like, why would someone not want to do that? And I also understand why. To be in the body is really hard. To do this work is really hard. To touch on the difficult things is really hard. There's been so many moments in my life, and there's going to be more, where I have asked myself, why do I do this work? I kind of just want to check out. I look at other people that just like smoke it away or drink it away or eat it away or whatever it is. And I think like, do you know what? That looks nice right in this moment. Because we don't always want to feel. Like, we don't always want to feel. That's a very real, true thing. And I think that people need to be more real and raw about this. Is like, we don't always want to be with our feelings. We don't always want to be with our bodies. Sometimes we just want to be in the negativity and the anger and the frustration and the just checking out and doing whatever it is that we escape with. Trust me, I experience that too. I think that's very normal. And at the end of the day, it's also a what do you choose? As I always say, what do you choose? What do you choose in terms of your future, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your body, your state of health? What do you choose? And I don't judge anyone for what they choose. I really don't. I think that life is really complicated. I think that in the self-help, self-development, spiritual, somatic, embodiment, body work, all the things world, I don't think anyone has all the answers. I don't think anyone has everything figured out. I think that we choose what works for us and paths we want to take for the life that we want. And that's it. You choose, right? And this episode is really just to give that understanding of what is somatic work? What does embodiment truly mean? And why do we do it? And speaking of embodiment, to do somatic work doesn't mean, that means you're an embodied person. I think this is something we also have very, very wrong. Embodiment's an interesting one. Let's unpack that for a second. Now, I am the first one to say I love a good, intuitive, embodied, sensual dance session. And I think that a lot of what embodiment is referred to today, especially in the somatic spiritual world, is that and ecstatic dance and free movement and all these things, which, yes, it's literally a part of my daily practice for the most part, unless I'm deciding to totally check out, which I do that too. And embodiment is a bit deeper than that. Embodiment doesn't, I hate this term, someone's an embodied person or they're not an embodied person, although I think it's nuanced and there's some truth to that in ways. Being embodied does not mean you're in a constant state of feeling. It doesn't mean that an embodied person doesn't disassociate or freeze or get activated or get triggered. This is the trap. In these teachings, this is the trap. Doing the practices and learning this does not stop you from being human. It does not stop your intelligent system from doing what it does to protect you. Embodiment is being in the practice of being in the feeling and being in your body, being in body. And a part of that, most of the time, is noticing when you're not in your body, because it will happen. You're so much far worse off being like, oh my God, I do all these somatic practices and I just got so angry and totally checked out and watched a full season of Friends while eating a tub of ice cream. What's wrong with me? The embodiment isn't working. I'm not an embodied person. You're far worse off being like that and far more disembodied being like that than being in the experience of wow, I feel really checked out right now. I feel really numb. I just want to smoke weed all day. I want to eat the tub of ice cream. I want to watch a full season of Friends. That's interesting. I may do it. I may not. It's my choice at the end of the day. But that's interesting. Let me just notice that. That's being embodied. Also noticing when you're not in body. And so that can be a trap as well with embodiment and disembodiment. Yes, interpreting can also be when it's this constant state wherein if we're in a constant state of interpreting, that can be really disembodying. And embodiment, to be an embodied person, doesn't mean that you're constantly in a state of feeling and in body and with your emotions and regulated and with a window of tolerance. No, it's also noticing when you're not. And I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle of understanding this work. And then, it's complex, it's like we're connecting the mind and the body. Somatic work isn't just being with the body and letting go of everything to do with the mind. That's not possible. It's being in the awareness, being in the noticing, being the witness with compassion as well. And I think that if you're interested in this work and doing it in order to deepen the relationship with yourself, as I always say, I think that is a really good place to want to be when it comes to healing work. Because at the end of the day, the most important person in your life is yourself. There is nobody more important because you have to wake up with yourself every single day. You have to be with yourself every single day. So what do you choose that relationship to be? Do you choose to get to know yourself better? And do you choose not to? I won't judge you if you choose not to. At the end of the day, as I said, what do you choose? It's a choice. And so it's a complex topic, discussing somatic work and embodiment and what it all actually truly means and how we practice it. But I think a really good place to start is just, how do I feel? How do I feel? Not what do I think I feel? How do I feel? What is the sensation of my experience right now? And a question I often ask is, you can think of it like this, and this is actually a really great journal prompt. When someone asks you, so tell me about yourself. Someone says to me, so tell me about yourself, Susanna. I might say, well, my name's Susanna. I'm originally from Australia, but I'm living in Mallorca, Spain, and I'm a somatic coach and I'm a yoga teacher. I really enjoy to dance and I love going out into nature and doing hikes, and ocean is therapy to me, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So that's like, tell me about yourself. Versus, how does it feel to be you? How does it feel to be Susanna? And so this can be a little prompt for you to notice, what would you say? What is your answer when someone says, tell me about you? And then write about, how does it feel to be you? How does it really feel on a sensory level to be you? And so before I wrap this episode up, I just want to say that, relating back to what I said in the beginning, that it's not just that easy to just be in the body. Actually, for a huge amount of people, it is quite impossible at times to feel anything in their body, especially when there's a lot of trauma history there. And the most important thing when it comes to a healing journey, to beginning to work through this stuff, if that is something that you want to do, is safety. Safe spaces. Learning safety in your own body. And we heal through connection as well. So finding spaces that are safe for you, whether that is a coach or a therapist that you trust, that is a safe space for you, and not that someone else tells you to trust, that you trust, that has built trust with you. Spaces that you genuinely feel safe in, not just because the advertising online says it's a safe space. No, somewhere you actually feel safe. This is the most important place to start, is finding those spaces where you can safely process with someone who knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing. And if you ever have any questions for me, you can reach out and I can help you with resources depending on what it is you're searching for. And just always remembering that giving ourselves the gift of safety, whatever that looks like in your environment, in the people that you're around, in the space that you hold for yourself, is the very first and most important step. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the episode here. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Can't wait to be back next time to keep diving into these fascinating topics and hopefully making it a little more tangible and easier to understand. See you next time. Thank you so much for being here with me and joining the conversation. If you would like to continue this conversation and find out how you can work with me further, please visit my website at www.susannasoma.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate it. See you next time.